Welcome. Welcome back with us, listeners, viewers. We're always excited to have you with us with another episode of Business Leadership Experts. Everybody recognizes her face and Holm. I'm the one who's going to introduce myself, Mike Temple. I'm your host. Also, we are team coaches with Temple Executive Coaching. And the topic that we felt compelled to talk to you about today is one of those terms, and Anne has been experiencing, bringing your legacy mindset to work. Stop going through the motions. And as a reminder to our viewers and listeners, we don't Google this stuff or read the most popular article and then try to bring something to you. This is why we're not on the air every single day. We're busy coaching clients, so we're in the pit with you. And what the heck, bringing a legacy mindset to work? Stop going through the motions. What's that all about?
Well, so what made me think this would be a topic that would be worthy of discussion is, I think, actually piggybacking on your discussion about the Great Resignation, I think individuals are wondering, if there is some sort of new formula out there to decide what to do with yourself work-wise now that the whole pandemic is largely blown over. Now we're talking about, do I stay here? Do I leave? Do I, what do I do? And we're often looking at that question from the perspective of steps and going through the motions and things like that, but we're missing a really, really important piece of it, which is the idea of our values and how we want to be viewed, not only in that job, but long term. We use the term legacy. It does, I almost don't like the word legacy because there's a funeral site called Legacy, but we're not talking about that. We're really talking about impact and how you want to show up in a job, or what job do you want to show up in based on your value system.
So, and as you're kind of going through this, because a lot of times we look at the organization, the company leaders, to be this type of a leader, to be this type of an organization, but who you are is who you are.
Right.
And what you bring to the table at a job that pays $75,000 is not going to be any difference as to who you are past $100,000. And Ann and I were discussing off camera. There have been a couple of studies that have shown that, once you hit a certain level of income, who you are is who you are. And adding more money to it won't make you a quote unquote better employee. And I think that a lot of individuals and are wasting an opportunity by kind of playing it safe at work, not really stepping into their potential. Is that kind of what you see?
Yeah. And I guess what I see is that there are opportunities to get more out of work than just working. Where you say, what are my job duties, et cetera, but not feeling like you can really lean into it or bring your best self to it. So the thing I'd like to use, the example I like to use is, if any of you have ever had like a janitor at your school that was there for like 30 years and the guy retires and everybody is just crushed that the guy's gone. And I'm going to say to you, it's probably not because he got the webs out of the corner better than anybody else. It was probably some sort of personal quality that he brought to the table, some sort of friendliness, warmth, safety, whatever it was, but he brought personal qualities and a particular self when he came to that job. And that became the legacy. And that's why he was missed when he was gone and why he was beloved when he was in that role. And we often don't take the time to think of our work from that angle. And I call that the legacy angle.
Okay.
So,
and legacy doesn't have to be, this long after you're gone, the books that will be written about you.
Right.
This could actually mean, what do you want your work, your attitude to look like after your shift is done, or,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
last week, is your legacy good times? How did you behave in good times? But most importantly, how did you conduct yourself in difficult times during
Yeah.
struggles?
Yeah. And again, a lot of this, how you show up, whether it's good or bad times, a lot of this is going to be determined by a good sense of your values.
Mm,
So it's, you brought up, uh, your son working at, as a server,
mhm,
and times when when the food order was incomplete, and he wasn't going to take it to the customer without the complete order, and
mhm,
people urging him, oh, just take it, they're not going to notice or whatever. So there's something in there, whether it is a value around integrity, a value around making sure that person's absolutely delighted. Whatever it is, there is something that is value based that makes him take that extra step. And
oh, I like
so,
that.
yeah, so being connected to that, what's that value that makes you want to take the extra step to make you want to show up at work with a particular
Mm,
attitude? But we don't typically go through that exercise unless somebody maybe, takes you through it as in a coaching exercise or something like that, or you're having a deep conversation with a friend, for instance, and you're saying, what do you want to be known for, or
mhm,
whatever. We often just go through the motions because we don't know we have this alternative, which is to actually pay attention to what
mhm.
matters to us.
Yeah, and to me, Ann, and as I've said many a times, your core principles are who you are inside work, but outside of work, with some
Yeah.
minor adjustments to it.
Mhm.
And an organization's values are
Mhm.
how do we conduct ourselves in, of course, good times, but the real values come to the surface in difficult times
Yeah.
when we have to step into them instead of floating by.
Yes.
Now, and granted, it can take some time to find out really what are my values. Past,
Yes.
right? We all
Yes.
say honesty, integrity, hardworking, but what that looks like and how that shows up could mean different things to different people,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those, when we think of values, sometimes
Mhm,
we think of it as some sort of like really lofty thing that are going to be words like integrity and all of that. And that could be a core value. But it could be, that you want to come and bring a sense of fun to your work. You come to work and everybody's kind of nose to the grindstone, and you come and you
mhm,
bring up the level of energy by way of your warm personality, or your fun or whatever. Um, those are also values. There's
mhm,
if you Googled values for a value sort, you could see hundreds of them. So it's not just a few of them,
mhm.
where we get hung up on those lofty things. It's not necessarily something lofty. It's just core to who you are.
Mm. So in some of the sessions that
Mm,
you've been having with your
mhm.
clients, and without naming names or organizations,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you've noticed that have started to kind of come to the surface in some of your discussions?
Yeah. Okay. So the uh, a client of mine, one of his top values was creativity. All right.
Mhm.
So when you hear the value, creativity, think, okay, that's pretty broad, right?
Yeah,
It's
right.
it's very broad. So uh, when I work with somebody like that, I say, okay, creativity, that's a top value. So the way I do the exercise when I work with somebody is, I'll give them a list of like 100 values. I'll say, okay, pick the top 10, pick the top 5, pick the top 3, right? And when we get
Mhm,
down to the level of 3, those are usually like your points of resonance or your tuning fork, so to speak. It's
mm,
almost like you hit a tuning fork, you hit the tuning fork and it goes like that. So
mhm,
when you hit those top 3, you're typically at the tuning fork stage where you actually know that this is your point of resonance. But you have to actually define that a little bit further. So creativity to you would be maybe very different than creativity to me. So
True.
asking that client to define, well, what does creativity mean to you? Well, it
Mhm.
means that I have the capacity to approach a problem any
Mhm.
way that I want. I want to be able to have that flexibility, because I bring unique solutions. If
Mhm.
I can be creative, then I am leaving a mark, and therefore I'm at a point of resonance, and therefore I'm leaving a legacy, right?
Right.
So you go through that kind of an exercise, and it could be any value. It could be, if we take the example of the janitor, I
Mhm.
want to make sure that, no one has to deal with a mess. I want to make sure I'm always there so everybody feels like they can get about their day, they can count on me. So that person might have a value around reliability, or, you know, uh, uh, you know, service, or whatever that is. But then they have to define it in the context of their own work. So we're looking for that tuning fork thing. And when you hit that tuning fork experience, you're talking legacy.
Mm.
Yes.
Kind of the action defines, obviously, the action defines the word, gives definition to the word.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, and it's what a how you leave your legacy is not condensed into 100 options.
Right.
It's 100 broad categories or more, plus your definition of it. All right.
Right.
So, and you can take any job that a person does, and you can look at those values, and you can say, okay, in the context of the work that you do,
Mhm.
or how do you want to bring that to that
Oh.
job? So, and the reason why I'm seeing this a lot now, this question about, what do I want to do, is
Mhm.
because of, the Great Resignation. Maybe this is my chance to do a new
Okay.
job. All right. Maybe this is my
Mhm.
opportunity to pursue something else. Those questions are being asked a lot, right?
True.
So, but if you just look at something like salary and job duty,
Yeah.
uh, it may not pivot you in the right place, because the deeper engine underneath all this is that legacy, or that tuning fork mindset. So
Very true.
yeah. So somebody, for instance, who's, doing is training somebody who's, they're in a
Mm.
role that they have to do training, and
Okay.
they say to themselves, okay, how do what can I tap into that is a value of mine, that will make me good at this and leave a legacy. Well, maybe you see yourself as a great teacher. You love to teach, you love to do those kinds of things. Well, now you tap into
Mhm.
that value to do the training,
Hmm.
you see. So
Yes.
finding that makes you go, oh, this is how I'm going to do this work, versus, I got to go train somebody,
Right.
which is a
Well,
different thing.
and that's a good point. And but Ann, what do we do to overcome, the old saying, what if I'm the only one who cares? It
Hmm.
seems I'm the only one who cares. Everyone
Hmm.
else around me is here to get the paycheck, go home.
Yep.
Now, what do I do? How do I
Well,
respond?
regrettably, you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do, you know and it's folly to think otherwise, right?
Mhm.
So if nobody else cares, that's energy you're diverting towards trying to make people care when they don't. So it's
Mm.
really about pivoting back to, what are my values, what do I want to accomplish, right?
Right. Right.
So let's say you're part of a team,
Mhm.
of sports team.
Right.
Let's say it's a high school sports team,
Now I
and
understand.
they're not very good. And the people largely who are playing on that team don't really care, right?
Right.
So you could spin and spin and spin about, I want them to care. I want that, point your arrow at them,
Mhm.
versus saying, okay, look, you know, I want to be the best hitter in the suburban high school league. So I will focus on that. I will focus on that. It's a high value of me to
Mhm.
deliver at the plate, to be competent at this, and I will do that. and you do it.
Okay.
Because it's literally, you can't, you've two options as far as I'm concerned when people don't care. Either A, you leave
Right.
and say, I'm going to go somewhere where they do care,
Right.
or you say, B, I can't divert energy trying to make somebody do something they simply just aren't going to do. You're pulling teeth out of the rattlesnake. You know where that saying comes from. Uh, Literally, there's truth to that. There's certain things that are just like pulling teeth out of a rattlesnake. What is your legacy going to be? What are you going to bring to the table? If
Mm,
you work with 5 waiters and 4 of them are lousy, you
right.
just, what are you going to bring to the table? So that when you leave, they're going to say, oh yeah, that was the guy that we hated to lose because of
Mm.
those particular qualities. So
So you want to be the person that they hate to lose.
that would be
No.
helpful. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But another way to do it too. So in coaching, we do have this thing called the future self exercise as well,
Okay.
where you sort of settle into maybe your retirement party, or maybe you're just going to be leaving a particular role that you've been doing for a really, really long time, and you take time to settle in and sort of envision people describing your impact on that
Hmm.
particular role, or you're retired or whatever. And you ask yourself, what do you want people to say about you?
Okay.
So in my case, um, my highest value is helping other people uncover their potential.
Okay.
It's high on my list, and it doesn't matter if I was a speech pathologist working with brain injured people. I'm still working at helping them to be their best, whether it's uh, raising kids, grandkids, helping friends get a different perspective on things. I think it's my point of resonance. And
Right.
so at the end of the day, that's what I really want to be known for
Hmm.
is, I helped out a lot of people be better, a better version of themselves. Right.
Right.
Um, so um, when you can sit and you can think to yourself, and it doesn't matter what job you're doing, literally, you're at
Right.
somebody's at your retirement party. What do you want people to say? You
Right.
know, yeah, they showed up every day,
Almost. Yeah.
almost, or they hung in there, or whatever,
Yeah.
versus, what was that impact? When they showed up, this is what we could count on.
Hmm.
This is, you want to be the person that they miss, not the glad you're gone.
Yeah.
All that stuff falls into the category of legacy. Legacy is driven by your values.
Right.
And values are defined as those 2 or 3 things that make you resonate almost like a tuning fork.
And as I, listening to you talk about this, I see there's really 3 types of individuals. When you have stated, when the organization, I always say, if the organization does not create their culture, their values with purpose, it's going to grow on its own. And if that happens, you have no idea what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Right. So once you've put it, and it's work, I'll be honest, I just finished a strategy session here about a week and a half ago, and it's been tough finding their authentic, true values.
Yeah.
And there's 3 groups once you've outlined your values. There's champions, there's observers, and then there's challengers to
Okay.
your values.
Yeah.
And the champion is just kind of what you said, and the organization's values resonate with that individual.
Yep.
Maybe the individual understands, they're kind of self-aware, they know what their values are, so they can kind of lean into them a little bit. And kind of like you brought up, they're in a little bit extra early because they want to help.
Yep.
They'll stay a little bit later without asking them. It's because they're worried, they're concerned about the impact that they're making. They'll help other individuals,
Mhm.
they'll even support, they'll kind of be a little bit of a locker room leader, and they'll support the values sometimes by calling other people out. Hey, that's not how we do it here at
Mhm.
XYZ organization. I know that's how you did it there, but here's how we do it here.
Mm.
So they're a champion of the values. They resonate. Observers are just that. They kind of
Mhm.
observe. Whatever the prevailing wind is, that's who I am. They'll just kind of go with the flow. Now, if you've got a negative culture, the observer is going to go along with it. So, but if it's everything's good, they're good. If everything's bad, they're bad. They just kind of go with the flow. They're not intentional to disrupt or hurt anything. The challengers are the ones that you want to be really, really concerned about. And those are the ones who are at odds completely with your core values. They'll have a meeting after you've had a meeting. And it's usually, what'd you guys think of that meeting? I don't know about you, but I don't think, Jane Doe really knows what's going on here. I don't know about you guys. They don't pay me enough to do that. Right. Now they can be good technically at their job, but they're still going to destroy and chip away at the organization.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to add to that is it may be that you're not aligned well with that company's values, because there's nothing pure necessarily about one company's values over another. But if you do find yourself challenging, that's when you take a step back and ask yourself, is this a good alignment? I mean, I know people who leave exactly for that reason, that they are in tune with their values and they say those values are not in alignment. That's how important this is, to be truthful. It's not only what you want to leave, but where do you want to land in which you can be in alignment with that.
Correct.
So, I just want to nuance it. It's not necessarily somebody you want to worry about, but if you're that person, you might want to ask yourself, is there something fundamentally misaligned between how they want to do stuff and how I want to do stuff? And those things really make a difference too, in terms of your path to legacy and everything. It just may not be there in that other company. So
yeah, and you're absolutely right. I use kind of the extreme example there to kind of show the impact. And to your point, Anne, there can be organizations that, they don't have a strategy. There's no process.
Yeah.
No defined process. It's just do it. Just kind of winging it.
Yes.
And that's just at the core of who they are.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean they're bad.
Right.
The individual who's a challenger to that could say, I really want to know where this organization is going.
Yep.
Having these things in places to where I can see what impact I can make on the organization.
Very true.
I'm a challenger to these values. It doesn't mean both either the organization is bad and evil or the individual themselves is bad as evil. Like you said, it just means there's no connection there. And they move on.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And I think the overall umbrella thing here is that if you're really wanting to decide what you're going to do after the Great Resignation, or you decide what you want to do, in this next job or whatever, it's the opportunity to, if you're going to do it, you do it, but do it with this mindset around what your values are, not necessarily, I'm going to make 85 versus 75 in a job in which I'm totally malaligned with my values and my legacy, because it will wear you down.
It will. There's
usually not enough skins to make up for a malalignment between you and how, you see your work. I know a guy who is very smart, well educated, et cetera, does this work, and he's miserable. He's flat out miserable because it's not in alignment with where his greatest values are. But he hangs in there, and he's a little bit nervous about, where would I go? And
to make this kind of money, right?
To make this kind of money, but he's still not feeling the satisfaction. You know what I mean?
True.
There's that, satisfaction and legacy and values all kind of live in the same, neighborhood. And then the drudgery or whatever lives somewhere else.
Correct.
And so there's a place where there's an alignment of all this, and then there's a place where it's like, I'm working, I'm making another 10 grand, but God, what I hate getting up on Monday and signing onto that computer or whatever.
Friday can't come soon enough.
Friday night can't come soon enough. Now, what if you're stuck in one of those jobs? I mean, maybe you were stuck. Maybe you have nowhere to go,
Right.
so you can choose misery, or you can see where you can bring yourself, your legacy self to that job. It may be that you're stuck. So it's not that everybody has the opportunity to just go when they want to go. But can you make it a little bit better? Like, let's say it's, you're the janitor and you don't particularly relish the next mess, but can you shift your thinking to accommodate the idea that the people really, really are counting on you and appreciate you, and some other sort of value that makes coming to work a little bit easier, And there's been studies around this kind of stuff, by the way. Same work, what's your, how connected are you with your values to be able to bring that or your legacy to that job, even if you're stuck in that job.
So in one, I think in one way to figure this out before you accept the job is to first know what your own values are.
Absolutely.
Right.
Would really be helpful.
Yes. Would be huge, but then ask the organization what their values are and see if there's an alignment.
Yeah, it would be helpful. It'd be, you may not be able to kind of know it till you're in there, but you could, it's a good first exercise to see, if you feel like, using the example of a sports team, when people are going to get traded, these high-end athletes are going to get traded and they have some sort of say in where they go. There's something that they're looking for when they agree to be traded, whatever that is. It might be, I want to return back to my home where I grew up. I'm a legacy athlete. I grew up in, in Chicago, and I want to finish my career in Chicago around my loved ones and all that. So now we're not talking necessarily salary or division champion or anything else like that. You're talking my highest value right now is being around my family or being around where I grew up, to sort of wind it all down. So, it's very similar to that.
And since we're going to use sports analogies, and really, if you want me to understand anything, you're gonna have to throw a sport analogy in there. But I remember back, I can't remember the years, but there was a player for the San Antonio Spurs, my team, and his name was Maurice Cheeks. So for you sports enthusiasts out there, maybe you remember Maurice Cheeks. He had been traded to the San Antonio Spurs, and he played point guard, or one of the guard positions. And he didn't like it there. He was traded there, and he didn't like it. He wanted to be, I think it was out east, New York, Philadelphia. He didn't like it there so much that he didn't rent. The rumor was he didn't even rent a home or an apartment. He kept his luggage, his clothes at a hotel.
Okay.
He was that ready to
go.
He wanted out.
Yeah.
However, his play on the court never showed that.
Okay.
Fans had no clue. That was his attitude when he was on the court, when he was in practice. He gave it his all.
So he brought a legacy mindset around some other value, around competence or delivering or whatever it is.
Appreciation. Whatever it was. When he left, fans were sad to see him go, because when he was on the court,
he was
amazing.
He
gave it his all. He never, there was no dissension. He never rumbled, never talked about, how he hated San Antonio, any of that. He kept the conversations to where the impact did not hurt the organization. He
and
didn't
it's
want
interesting.
To bring embarrassment.
And this is what I was talking about in terms of that other shift, that if you can't get out of it, next best thing is to bring your Maurice Cheeks attitude.
Yeah.
So people don't even know, that this isn't the true greatest alignment of your top value, which sounds like that was a geographical thing. Maybe he was from that area, but but he was in a particular situation where this is where he was, and he was memorable, and no one had any idea. that he wasn't invested in the community or anything else like that, but he tapped into something else. And that's what I think the whole conversation is about, is what can you tap into
Mhm.
to channel your Maurice cheeks, so to speak, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I like of your legacy being, and maybe that's, a word that's thrown around too much. Yes,
Yes.
after you leave, but I also think that your legacy can be next, last week,
Yeah, it sure
last
can.
shift,
Yep.
all of these things, and tapping into your core values as to who you are, seizing the day, right, Ann?
Yes. Little carpe diem for once, right? I was just talking
Carpe
about that. Whatever happened to carpe diem? It's been be safe, be safe, be safe.
but lay it out there,
Yeah.
and and take advantage of every opportunity to bring your best self
Yes. Yes.
to that particular moment,
Yep. Yep.
right
And
now.
at the end of the day, you'll benefit too.
Oh,
Not
yes,
just the people, but how you show up and how much you enjoy what you're doing will also be part of it. Get
I,
curious about how you can carpe diem.
I've told my kids, and some a lot of business leaders, you have to be battle tested. And battle tested means you're going to have to go through things you might not particularly enjoy or
Right.
like, or want to be the victim, but bring your whole self to that
Right.
moment and get through it, and then look back and say, what was it about me? One or two things that got me through it, or why couldn't I get through it?
Yeah.
So, but
Y-
Anne, you did say, and I want to go back to this real quick, to help discover your internal strengths. Is that, am I getting
Yeah.
it correctly?
Yeah. Or your what your drivers, your
Your
motivators.
drivers are that there are some things, a process that you take individuals through. Can you, what was
Yes.
the name of that process one more time?
So what I take them through what I call the five sage powers. And
Okay.
so, it's understanding who you are at the core with empathy, not judging like, what have you been doing all these years? Or I'm
Mhm.
in this really crappy situation and it's their fault or any of that other stuff. We're taking away that judgment and having an empathetic look at the situation we're in now, taking a detached look at what are the circumstances that we are currently finding ourselves in, what are our options, and then given our options, what are our values or our navigational beacons that are going to take us to a particular set of action steps. So if you think about you're going to change your job, uh,
Mhm.
and you are looking at, this is the lay of the land, this is what I'm doing now, and you're just kind of putting it out there. Well, what are my options instead would be the next step. And then the next step after that would be, what are the navigational beacons that are going to make me choose one over the other? And then you
Mhm.
go on to make that particular action step. But you can't skip that step, that navigational beacon step, that legacy step,
Mhm.
when it comes to making these kinds of decisions.
And
So,
then you use those tools when you're in a situation that might not be
right.
favorable to you,
Yes.
to manage your way through it,
Yes.
to
Yes.
make the
That
right decisions as to where do I want to be,
exactly.
how
Exactly.
can I
Because
find it out, and then how do I behave, my
right.
strengths to bring to bear in
Those
difficult situations.
situations as well. Yeah, exactly. So it's just super important to keep that mindset versus what I would say a malcontent, not show up,
Mm,
miserable mindset. Like,
I like that.
I hate this. I hate this work. Now, there's a whole other body of conversations we can have around
Right.
boundaries in terms of, do I, I really only want to work 40 hours because I also have a family. There's all that kind of stuff
Right.
to be discussed, and that's a different set of correlates to look at. But the idea of making these decisions and how you want to show up come at the level of values, and they become your navigational beacons for
Mhm.
your action steps that lead to your legacy.
So how do you want to show up, not only in good times, but in challenging times?
Yeah, I wouldn't make that the big take home of this conversation. The big take home is not even the good and the bad, but the idea of kind of what is the general direction that you want to take in all your decisions when you decide how you're going to do work, et cetera. So it's a secondary thing for sure, the good and the bad, but it's really more about being in touch with those decisions to make good, deliberate decisions about how you want to be viewed.
Very good.
So, yeah,
And it couldn't
not
come
that
in
the
more.
other part is, I was saying not that the other part isn't important, but I think the take home message is more about your mindfulness, I guess, around these decisions. So,
And how you can make the right decision at the moment that will make an
yes,
impact as to where you're at, not only at work, right, but in your personal life outside of
absolutely.
work.
Absolutely. Tuning forks are happiest when they're in resonance. Bing.
And with that, folks, with that being, to find out more, what's again the name of that test, Ann?
This is the positive intelligence program.
Okay. To
Yep.
find out more about Ann and the Positive Intelligence Program, you can find her at Ann Holm. I'll put her contact information right underneath there. Ann, Ann at Temple Executive Coaching. It's right under her name right there.
Yes.
Don't wait, folks. Contact her. Get this thing figured out. It's either going to be the Great Resignation, or if economists are correct and we head into, the Great Recession.
Let's end on the tuning fork.
Let's end on the
go
tuning
there.
fork.
Be on the tuning fork side of this. You don't want to go into the read the tea leaves. Don't read to the tea leaves at this point.
Don't read in the tea leaves, and I don't even drink tea. All right.
All right.
Well, Ann, thank you so much. And once again, guys, hey, if you like this segment, please comment, share with others. We appreciate having you. Until then, I'm Mike Temple. That's Ann Holm of Business Leadership Experts. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.